A 2-year-old child suddenly flies out of an open back door of a car going 40 to 50 miles an hour and rolls to a stop in the middle of the 4-lane highway near downtown Chicago. The mother driving the car pulls over and runs toward her baby as fast as she can. As she's running, a larger, older black man is making his way across traffic with his arms spread wide, trying to stop the oncoming cars to protect the child. He waves his arms to get the attention of the tired rush hour drivers. He stands between the child and traffic until they can safely bend down and pick him up. Then he rushes him to his panel truck. Separated from him by 4 lanes of traffic now, the mother hears him shout for her to get off at the next exit and follow him to the hospital. They both race toward the hospital. Doctors examine the child, and the mother arrives frantic, asking, "Where's my baby?" A nurse points to a small room and asks her to wait there. A short while later, the elderly black gentleman comes in after answering a few questions in the back. He tells the mother her son is going to be okay and that she can stop crying now. He explains that the hooded coat absorbed most of the impact and that sadly it's ruined now. The mother doesn't care about the coat, although she had just purchased it earlier that day. Then he asks her something unexpected. "Has your boy ever seen a black man before?" the man asked. She doesn't know how to answer. Her mind's racing. She can't understand why he would ask this question now. He says, "I don't believe he has, but after today, he'll remember this black man." He goes on to describe how the boy would wake up and look up at him, and his eyes would roll back in his head and pass out, only to do it again and again. The mother wants to see her son, but the hospital staff asks her to be patient while the doctors continue working. Before leaving for home and dinner, the elderly man gives her his contact information. Everything happened so fast that the mother didn't think to thank him right there and then, but later she did. As the mother waits, another woman rushes in. The nurse directs her to the same small room. When she sits down, she notices the mother is distraught and still crying and asks, "What's wrong?" The mother explains she had been driving to pick up her husband from work. Her son was sitting next to her in the front seat, wearing a new hooded coat, but the car was heating up and she was worried that he was getting too warm. So she tried to unzip the coat and lower the hood as she's driving. The child, deep in the terrible twos, was stubborn. He climbed into the back seat where she couldn't reach him, and as she tried to reason with him about listening to his mom, he touched the door handle. Now, in those days, the back door of some cars opened from front to rear. When the wind caught that door, it became a sail. In an instant, her son was gone, shot out onto the pavement and tumbling among the cars. She stopped the car as fast as she could and ran, and that's when she saw this huge black man blocking traffic, arms raised like Moses parting the Red Sea. Cars found their way around him as he bent down, gently picking up the boy. And then he ran to his panel truck telling her to follow him to the hospital at the next exit. As the mother finished her story, the woman motioned to a man nearby and said, "This was an accident. You can let her go be with her baby now." The mother responded, "Well, of course it was an accident. Who would ever harm their baby?" The woman replied quietly, "Ma'am, you'd be surprised." She was from Child Services. Her gentle listening was her way of finding the truth. By now, most of you have probably figured out that I was that child. I only know the details because my mother told the story over and over. But years later, I found a strange way to confirm what had happened in that hospital that night. For as long as I can remember, I had the same dream, at least once a week. I was about 40 when I finally understood it, and a conversation with my mother confirmed everything. Dreams can be powerful. They can also be strange. This one was always the same. And once I figured it out, the dream never returned. The dream began in complete darkness. I would hear squeaky sounds, growing louder and louder, until the room suddenly filled with bright sunlight. Then the squeaky would return, but loud. Someone was touching me, but I wasn't a child. I was a big, red, overly inflated, heart-shaped balloon. I could see my heartbeat as the balloon pulsed with each beat. The pain was intense as someone squeezed that balloon. Then the squeaking returned, followed by pitch black darkness. The sound faded. I would hear my mother's voice softly singing so quietly that no one outside of the room could hear. The dream repeated this same cycle 2 or 3 times every night. I always woke up wondering, why do I dream the same thing? One night, I woke up in the middle of it, sat straight up in bed, and shouted, "It's not a dream. It's a memory." Later that week, I talked to my mom. She said, "How could you know any of that? You were too young to remember. They told me you would forget." She never wanted me to remember the pain. What mother would? I did forget. But deep down, my mind didn't. It hid it in a dream until I was old enough to understand. That night, my mom sat on a hard oak chair in the corner of the hospital. She wasn't going to leave her baby boy alone. The night nurse told her if she sat behind the door, said nothing, did nothing, she would pretend she didn't see her. In those days, parents weren't allowed to stay all night. So she sat there all night long, never leaving the room, never leaving me alone. Once my mom and I talked about my dream, I never had it again. It was as if my mind had given me a mystery to solve. And once I solved it, it faded away. Now, some will say this explains a lot about why I am the way I am, tumbling down a highway that way. If not for the thick new coat, if not for God sending a huge man who cared more about protecting a child than his own safety. I most likely wouldn't be here. But here I am. And at 70, I'm still not sure what great thing I was saved to do. But maybe I was never meant to do one great thing. Maybe I was meant to do many small things so someone else could do one great thing. That's the story of the night I fell out of the car. My mother used to tell it, and she would cry every time. I don't think there's any greater pain for a parent than to see their child in pain. When I was younger, I didn't understand that until I had my own children. And they didn't understand it until they had theirs. It's funny how life makes things work out. But my mother said she was more frightened about the social worker once she had a moment to think about it and what could have happened. But the social worker, she believed mom 100% based on mom's body language, demeanor, everything. But what I find strange is I had this dream all the time. Once I figured it out, that it wasn't a dream, it was a memory, I never had it again. And I mean, it was painful in the dream. So, and it does explain a lot. I told a very good friend of mine this story years ago, and he looked at me strangely and said, "Now I understand exactly why you are the way you are." I don't know. Maybe I am strange. Maybe I am different. I like to think of myself as being unique. I think we all are unique. I'm unique just like everyone else. Well, I hope you found my story entertaining at least. It's 100% truthful. And if my mother hadn't just bought me that hoodie, and if that black man wouldn't have been there and came out on the highway, now think about that. He was an elderly man. He had no business being out there on that highway, crossing the highway and it was heavy traffic, I'm told. But he said, I saw that it wasn't a blanket tumbling down the road, that there was a child. And all he could think about was protecting that child. And it's true. I still don't know if I was saved to do something important. It's enough that I was saved. And I'm here. And I had children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. And perhaps someday one of those will do something great. Because they've already done great things, in my opinion. Because they're my babies. Well, I hope you enjoyed the story. Sorry about getting emotional. When you get old, you get emotional. But hit that like and share button if you would, please. And I'll see you in the next one, folks. Bye.